Meantime, our next guest voted present on President Trump's reconciliation bill during the first round in the House and now says he can't vote yes for the Senate's version. House Speaker Mike Johnson can only afford to lose a few votes in his chamber or the measure will fail. Joining us right now is Maryland Congressman Andy Harris. He is the chair of the House Freedom Caucus. Good morning to you. Where are we here? Tell me how many friends and colleagues do you have on your side at this point, and how you think this is all going to go down, because we are getting, as you know, down to the wire here.
Well, we're down to an artificial deadline wire, no question about that. The bottom line is we could take another week to get this thing right. The Senate bill moved way far away from the House bill, added about $750 billion to an already large federal deficit and debt. It did things like it stripped away the blocking funding for transgender surgery from minors. It stripped away, effectively stopping illegal aliens from getting Medicaid. It scaled back the Green New Scam provisions from the House bill. We should take the time to get this right. I think there are enough people who say, the House took a position, the Senate took a position. Now it's time to get somewhere between those two positions and send something to the president's desk.
Okay, so how realistic, though, given what you know about, as I say, your friends and colleagues who are on your side versus not, that are willing to effectively tell the president, no mas, we're not doing it this week, you're going to have to wait?
Well, the president's already indicated this may slip by a few days. I think, again, our goal is to get this done by the middle of next week. I think it's easily done to get a compromise version between the two chambers, and I think that's important for the American people. Again, adding $750 billion to an already large federal deficit and debt is probably not a good idea.
Have you? I assume you've spoken to Mike Johnson about this. What does someone like him tell you in private?
Well, look, I mean, the speaker says that this may be the best deal we can get. I've just been around the legislative process long enough to know when two chambers disagree like this, you usually can compromise somewhere in the middle, and somewhere in the middle could save hundreds of billions of dollars from the federal debt and deficit. Okay,
so you just talked about this $750 billion addition. What would you accept? Meaning, if it was 300, would you take it? And then where are you going to take it from?
Well, I don't like negotiating with myself, but the bottom line is that usually these end up as a compromise between the two chambers. So yes, if we found another $300, $400, $500 billion to apply to the deficit growth to stop it, then I think that would be a very reasonable thing to do, and I think that can be done. The bottom line is the Senate pretty easily added $750 billion. I think we can whack a considerable percent of that out in negotiation.
Let me just ask you about the math itself. So the CBO talks about this whole big, beautiful bill costing taxpayers the equivalent of $3.8 trillion over 10 years. If you talk to people inside this administration, they would say that there's a fundamental flaw in the math of the CBO, which is they say the CBO is estimating that growth over the next 10 years is going to be 1.8%, and that they're estimating it to be 2.8%, and that delta is big, and that changes the equation of the bill almost entirely. Who do you believe?
Look, our growth estimate is about 2.6, what we think we can get out of it. Even at 2.8, though, this grows the deficit tremendously. At 2.6, again, it would grow the deficit by $750 billion. That's way too much to grow a deficit. We already have a debt and deficit problem. We shouldn't be adding to it.
On that point, Representative, I believe that you said to Fox News that basically you agree with Elon Musk and his criticism of this bill, the concern about debts and deficits, et cetera. At the same time, we have the Hill this morning. The headline is that you guys are threatening to stage a revolt in Congress, and it sounds very contentious. And I'm wondering if there's any concern that you're basically picking a fight with the president, especially when you're siding with Elon Musk, the guy the president is now fighting with.
Look, we're siding with the House. The House took a position a month ago, and it took a position that was deficit neutral. Again, these inflammatory words, we're not talking about a revolt. We're talking about actually doing the legislative process the way it's supposed to be done. The House takes a position, Senate takes a position, and you come out somewhere in between the two. That's the way it works in legislatures all throughout the world and throughout the country. That's the way it ought to work here. We can get this done in the next few days. We should get it to the president's desk, but I don't think it's going to be ready by July 4th.
Congressman, I want to thank you. We will see what happens. By the way, just on a practical level, given that most of the senators have gone home, when do they all technically get back or could get back as early as?
Well, I don't know. They could get back as early as Monday, but you don't have to be in town to do the negotiations. And obviously, the Senate leadership probably would come back into town. They should not have left town. The bottom line, as the president said, everyone should stay in town until this bill gets done. Senate chose to leave town. That's their issue. Our issue is we're in town. We're willing to stay until we resolve this.
I have one final one. Do you think the Senate left effectively town as a negotiating tactic to put you in a bind and put you in the corner so that you have to accept this deal? Do you think that's part of what's happening here?
Absolutely. That's negotiating 101. You walk away from the table. The bottom line is they walked away from the table. They put a deal on the table, walked away, assuming that we would take it. I think the result will be quite different. Again, the leadership's going to have to come back into town and do the hard work of banging out a negotiation between the House and the Senate. It can be done. It can be done in the next few days, but I don't think it's going to be done by July 4th.